Everyone, my name is Brian Dodson. My presentation is going to be on the opiate epidemic. Excuse my uniform. I am at drill this weekend, and I'm kind of just trying to get everything done, so bear with me, please. I'm going to start off with the initial description of what opiates are and where they derive from. Opiates derive from the opium poppy plant, which its main use has been translated to a narcotic drug. Opiates are types of drugs that contain doses of illegal drugs such as morphine, heroin, fentanyl, and oxycodone. Opiates are primarily used as pain medication. The addiction to opiates, how that began and how it started, a lot of people, the government didn't understand that these drugs and the addiction it would create to the brain and to the body. Once a person has began taking opiates for a prolonged period of time, the body becomes more accustomed to its effects. And once the body has begun to build a tolerance to the drug, it now needs a higher dosage for it to work the same. Each time the effects of the opiate wears off, the person suffers just like they would suffer from any other addiction. Body begins showing symptoms of nausea, cold sweats, vomiting, sleep problems, anxiety, and much more. To my surprise, I didn't know that to relieve these symptoms, these people would have to be prescribed more opiates. But now the body will require a higher dosage in order for it to function the same, or to make the recovery that much worse. So, I actually did not know that opiate usage began way before the wars that our country has went through, but through laws and regulations, the usage was put to a minimum, and it wasn't necessarily that big of an issue. The problem became dramatic during the time of the Vietnam War. There were soldiers coming home with more issues than doctors could handle, and opiate treatment was seen as an answer to these pain issues. Opiate treatment was a temporary fix that created a major problem within our country. Now, some may wonder, okay, how does this relate to how rural communities and urban communities correlate or have a connection to one another? Well, the factors contributing to substance abuse in rural communities are low educational attainment, poverty, unemployment, high risk behaviors, and isolation. What some people don't know is that opiate usage among urban and rural communities are actually factoring around the same numbers, and depending on which drug is of use, the percentage can vary. Factors contributing to substance abuse in urban communities are such as accessibility. In urban communities, there is multiple types of drugs that are readily available at any given time. And as I mentioned, a connection between rural communities is that poverty, drug usage is more common in low-income families. So, as rural communities were once looked to be a safe haven to get away from city life and the things that were tied to them, rural citizens are more likely to be court-ordered to attend rehabs than their urban counterparts. Some differences between rural and urban communities and how they handle drug usage or what they're going through because of the drug usage varies. In rural communities, transportation to a rehab facility is one of the most prominent reasons as why help is not sought after. Family members do not always have the means to provide support to those with drug addiction. So when you're by yourself, you have really no one that you can turn to because of the distance and isolation that you're facing. It becomes a lot difficult to even want to fix this problem that you have or even to seek treatment for it. And also, in rural communities, resources for prevention, treatment, and recovery are very limited. So here are a few of the drug reform policies that have been put into place previously and some that are still continuing on today. The Harrison Narcotics Act. This act required importers, manufacturers, and distributors of cocaine and opium to register within the U.S. War on Drugs and Controlled Substances Act is really widely known as one of the most known acts put into place. It involved a greater emphasis on making the drug issue a law enforcement problem instead of a governmental problem. And for society, that's seen as a big issue because it kind of shifts blame. The Comprehensive Crime Control Act of 1984. This act enhanced penalties for drug charges. So when we begin to hear about court cases or charges that give someone 15 to 20 years for a drug charge or something nonviolent relating to drugs, and we're wondering, well, how did this happen? Well, that's because our government has put these acts in place that hold drug charges at a much higher rate than some would say other crimes. Um, Anti-Drug Abuse Acts of 1986 and 1988. This act pursued enforcement action against the illicit synthetic drug trade. The MDMA and the Illicit Drug Anti-Proliferation Act of 2003. This act targeted producers of raves where synthetic drugs were used. I'm not sure if everyone knows what raves was. I definitely had to look it up. Raves are these underground parties that a lot of the younger adults tend to go to, but at these parties, they're passing around hundreds of drugs that are on the street or not on the street. And this act enables the law enforcement agencies to punish those that are having these raves or with the location they're having these raves at, and not so much of the people that are giving the drugs. It's kind of finding a way to punish everyone so that it would deter them from even having drugs at their locations. So, how the government's approach affected society's reaction. In my opinion, I believe drugs were put into the public without proper knowledge of their capabilities. I would hope that if somebody would have had foresight to see that, okay, this drug can solve current issues right now, but in the long run, it's going to be detrimental, that it wouldn't have been given out to the public. The creation of drug policies took responsibility off of the government and placed it into law enforcement. And to some, they think that's a great idea. But in hindsight, you're really telling the public that, hey, I gave you these drugs. I gave it to you legally, and I knew you were going to become addicted to it. But after you did, now I'm going to punish you and stigmatize you. The population is being stigmatized, which decreases the amount of people who will seek assistance. Often people begin, as I said, using opiates for legitimate reasons. People get hurt on the job. People get hurt at home. People get in accidents and they get injured. And, they seek care to alleviate some of these pains. And when they're given medication and they go about it the proper way, they can't help that their body is getting addicted to this. And it's only seen as, okay, you're stigmatizing me for having this drug issue that I obtained legally. Now I don't want to seek help. So it's turned a negative way for us. I believe some of the strengths of the government's approach is that it recognizes opiate usage as a problem. I think that at least must be noted, because until you can recognize a problem, you don't know what you can do to solve it. There has been treatment facilities created for assisting citizens to stop usage. So we are seeing that, okay, this problem is being recognized, and at least someone is saying treatment facilities need to be created for those that want to seek assistance. There is this new drug. I couldn't really find out the name of it. There were so many different things going around on the internet, but it's being created to wean the population off of opiates, or those that come to seek treatment. It's weaning those addicts off of opiates using a drug that is less addictive. Excuse me. Now, the thing with this drug is that it's still an opiate. It's just, it's going into your body at a slower pace. So it's being able to alleviate some of the symptoms you're going through, but not become addictive in a way, if that makes any sense. Some of the weaknesses that I noted is that the government chose to make opiate usage a law enforcement problem. Once again, I do not feel that it is all or is able to be put all on the law enforcement agencies simply because it was legally put out there. Um, we have to start taking responsibility for the things we did and stop punishing those that sought help and can't help the effects that that caused. Um, in rural communities, treatment facilities are hard to access without transportation. So it's great that these treatment facilities are being put in place, but when you have areas where now the rural communities are, the numbers are becoming increasingly high for addiction, and you have these treatment facilities that are hard to reach, it kind of doesn't make any sense. How does that help them in any way? Um, More drugs are being created that could possibly increase the chances of relapse. In my opinion, this is the drug that I was discussing in one of the strengths. I mean, it is a strength that it is being created to assist in the help, but it does pose the question, okay, it's still an opiate, so is there still a possibility of relapse because of this drug also? Um, my recommendations for the policies is that drug reform should be geared more towards a societal issue instead of a law enforcement issue. More forums should be created that are saying, you know, I understand what you're going through, or even if I can't understand, I sympathize with the issues you are going through. And I see that the government put out this medication, your doctor prescribed this medication, and now we want to help you fix that. We want to help alleviate the issues that have come along with fixing that. Um, I believe provisions and policies should be made around the communities they govern. Uh, it, in my opinion, I believe that okay, so what works in an urban community is not necessarily going to work in a rural community. Having a group that meets weekly in urban communities may not work in rural communities because of confidentiality or because of embarrassment or shame that one may feel. So we should create provisions for policies that fit the communities that they govern. And I believe that interventions should be implemented and tailored to individual care plans. Everyone's story is different. And regardless if someone became addicted to opiates through legal measures or illegal measures, the issue still needs to be resolved. And they should be done on an individual basis. Well, that is the end of my presentation. I hope you all enjoyed. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you very much.